Hey there, and welcome to the Lindsey Elmore Show. Today's episode is all about food. First, I will be chatting with Amanda Nighbert, who is a dietitian, and I'm going to talk to her about the importance of intermittent fasting, eating plant-based cuisines, and how micronutrition may be actually what you need to get your entire body feeling better. Then I'll speak with Dr. Vivian Chen about how changing her diet and her children's diet changed their complete healthcare picture. After that, I will be debuting the first ever segment of The Perfect Relationship, a time when you get to hear from me and my partner, Derick, about what we go through in our normal day-to-day life. We will be talking this week about going out to dinner. Thank you so much for listening to the Lindsey Elmore Show. If you like it, share it with your friends and let us know what additional topics you'd like us to take on by sending us a suggestion over at www.lindseyelmore.com/podcast. We'd love to hear from you. And now let's move on to my discussion with Amanda Nighbert. Welcome to the Lindsey Elmore Show, a podcast that helps you find fulfillment amidst chaos. On this show, I interview thought leaders, doctors, creatives, spiritual gurus, and game changers who inspire you to pursue your dreams, overcome obstacles, and leave your mark. Amanda Nighbert is a registered dietitian who specializes in weight loss nutrition. She is a fitness enthusiast and a working mom of two. She is passionate about motivating, supporting, and educating people to meet their wellness goals. She's worked in the field of weight loss for the past 19 years, helping thousands of people not only to lose weight, but to uncover true wellness within themselves. She is an avid reader about the science behind weight loss, diet, and nutrition, and her opinions on how to achieve optimal health are ever changing because of it. This rapid change in the way that nutrition has evolved in the past 40 years has created confusion and frustration with the average person who is just wanting to live their healthiest life. She combines the latest and cutting-edge strategies along with techniques to help empower her clients to take control and ownership of their own health. She is a strong believer, as I am, that dieting is temporary. It's something that you start and then stop. It is much more important to focus on small lifestyle changes in order to truly achieve the goal weight that you desire. Her goal is to teach clients simple and effective lifestyle changes they can make, and more importantly, easily sustain throughout their life so that they create lasting results. Success is, and I agree with her so much on this, success is not about perfection, but it is about consistency. So, Amanda, thank you so much for joining me on the Lindsey Elmore Show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, so you, like I, believe that there has been just a massive onslaught of information in the past 40 to 50 years that has created a culture that is unempowered to take ownership of their own health because they don't know where to believe. So you've been researching nutrition science over the past 50 years, not you as a person, but information over the past 50 years. Yeah. What has changed in the past 50 years about how we have been taught to eat?
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem right now is there's so much noise in the space and they all conflict each other that people are just like, they don't know, they're paralyzed. They don't know what to do. And it really took kind of my own health, not really scared, but my own health scenario about 10 years ago when I was diagnosed with cholesterol over 300, for me to realize that the way we were eating was not supporting our overall healthy goals. And, my doctor wanted to put me on a statin at the age of 32. And I was like, I'm not ready to do that. Give me 6 months and let me see what I can do on my own. And so I went out and started researching, kind of the history of this low fat, low calorie diet, which was the way that I was living my life. I was a healthy weight, I was exercising. And what I realized is that in 1977, when the government came out with these low fat, low calorie guidelines, when they came out with that food guide pyramid, we knew very little about the endocrine system and really how our body burns fat and how we store fat. We really built this nutritional guidelines on the whole theory of calories in versus calories out. And the reason why fat got such a bad rap when we look at that theory is because for every gram of fat, you get 9 calories. Whereas for every gram of protein and carbohydrates, you get 4 calories. So with that, it was like, oh, well, because it's a calorie issue, then therefore we must restrict our fat intake. And the best way of eating would be a low fat, low calorie diet. So I always say there's 2 big things that went wrong in 1977 with these first set of nutritional guidelines. And that is this whole notion of calories in versus calories out. And then the whole notion of kind of 6 small meals a day, which we'll talk about a little bit in the future. But so that whole, once we made that declaration that fat was bad, what happened is all the manufacturers of food started to take all the fat out of their food. And what did they add?
Sugar,
carbs and sugars.
Yeah.
So we currently eat 4 to 5 times the amount of carbs and sugars today than we did in 1977. And the ironic part about it is we actually eat 25% less fat today than we did in 1977. So we did exactly what the government told us to do. And here we are. More overweight, more obese, more diabetes, more hypertension, more sick than we ever have been. And it really comes down to just the amount of processed sugar, carbohydrates that we've included into our diet.
So when I think about calories in, calories out, this is the concept where it doesn't matter where you're getting your calories, as long as you're burning more calories per day than you're taking in, you will inevitably lose weight. But that seems to be getting uncovered as a flawed argument. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. It's too simple. It just doesn't work like that. And again, we didn't have a good understanding of the endocrine system and kind of how that works. We now know that the number 1 fat storing hormone in the body is insulin.
Okay.
And anytime insulin is activated in the body, you are storing fat. Okay. Guaranteed. So we understand that now it's really about making sure that we're regulating our insulin levels. And we do that by regulating our blood sugar. So anytime that we eat something that's going to create a really high spike in our blood sugar, we know we're going to produce insulin. So the goal is really to kind of manage that glucose response. And here's the deal. A lot of times when you start talking about blood sugar and insulin, people automatically assume that that means that, oh, okay, so basically you're saying I need to eat no carb. I need to eat keto. That's the best way. And the problem is that we become so carb phobic that we don't even know what adequate carbohydrates are, how to find that balance.
Yes. And I think that we also become extremely protein overfed, which we've also seen as an evolution over the course of human history. So, okay, so we become so carb phobic, we don't eat anything. And then what happens to our body?
Well, then it's unsustainable. Someone can go on a low carb diet. You can do keto, for a small period of time. And then, you have a birthday and you have some cake and some cocktails. And then, you're back to square one. And so I always say, whatever you do to lose weight, you better be prepared to do to keep it off. Because the minute you start changing those habits that brought you success, you're going to gain it all back. So I always say, can you guess how much the average American eats in the form of carbohydrates? Like how many grams of carbohydrates do you think the average American eats?
Oh gosh, I've done so much more research about protein intake because, as someone who's primarily plant-based, that's one of the big questions I get.
Right.
But I don't know, but my guess is we're getting more of them in simple sugars than we are in complex carbohydrates that also bring that dose of fiber. So I don't know. Tell me.
So the average American eats 400 to 500 carbs a day.
A day?
A day. Yeah.
No.
And I know, Lindsay,
Isn't our needs like closer to 150? Am I
there you
crazy?
go. There you go. 150 is what we should be consuming. Most people, it will vary on a daily basis, but the average American eats 400 to 500 carbs a day. And again, that's for some, no, not me, and maybe not you, but if you go through a fast food place and you grab a large sweet tea, that's 75 grams of carbs.
Stop.
You grab a Big Mac and a large fry on top of that, that's 250 carbs. And guess what? It's 11 o'clock. We're just getting started. We didn't count our caramel macchiato we had in the morning. Our Snickers we're going to have in the evening. So carbohydrates add up really quickly. Mm-hmm. And here's the deal. When you go through that fast food joint and you see that large sweet tea, it's only 150 calories. So it doesn't feel that bad when we focus on calorie control.
Versus if you look at 1 tablespoon of olive oil, you are also looking at 150 calories because you've got 14 grams of fat. And
correct. But the olive oil has 0 carbohydrates and sugars.
Right.
So there's 0 glucose response. So there's 0 insulin response. So that's not stimulating fat storage. Fat does not make you fat.
Okay, so let's talk more about the relationship so for those people that don't know, insulin is our hormone that comes out of our pancreas. It helps to lower our blood sugar when our sugars spike. Amanda's been teaching us that when we eat sugar in our diet, it releases insulin, and insulin is what stores our fats. We also have a hormone called insulin-like growth factor that goes into overdrive. Tell us how this even further makes us put on weight.
Well, it all creates what we know now to be insulin resistance, where, basically it's kind of like, it's almost like being an alcoholic, okay? Or drinking alcohol. The first time you have a glass of wine, you get tipsy.
Right.
But then if you start drinking a glass of wine every night, it doesn't make you tipsy. Now it takes 2 glasses of wine to make you tipsy. Then eventually 2 glasses of wine, then it makes 3. So we start to create this kind of tolerance to it. So instead of requiring, this much insulin in order to bring our blood sugar back to normal, now we need twice as much to bring it back to normal. And again, the more insulin that's in circulation, the more likely you are to be storing fat versus burning fat.
Right, because insulin is what really helps your muscles to uptake sugars for use. But when your muscles aren't moving, when your brain is like, I've got enough sugar to last me for a while, the only thing left is to store the sugar as glycogen, which eventually just becomes fat. And really we start storing fat in places where we don't typically store fat, and that can be some of the most dangerous fats. And so in people who are eating massively high sugar diets, what are we seeing about fat distribution change in them?
Yeah, a lot of time, probably the most detrimental fat is that abdominal fat. If you're a woman and you're kind of hippie, you're a little bit more of a pear shape, the fat that you're carrying is less likely to create a health event versus someone who has like the really skinny legs and the really big belly. Like that, you can look around and you're like, he's a walking time bomb,
Yeah.
He's a heart attack ready to happen. So because that fat's around your organs. And so the more kind of visceral abdominal fat that you have in that kind of middle area, the more detrimental it is.
And don't we know that our stress hormones also impact the deposition of abdominal fat? So how does the stress that we currently face just in our everyday life, but then, going back to your point, when we do eat foods that are perfectly crafted with sugar, fat, and salt, and possibly caffeine, it is the absolute perfect addiction scenario. And so that where do I get my next meal also plays into stress that we may feel about our diet. So how does cortisol and stress play into our overall health?
Yeah, and I always say there, the two fat storing hormones in the body you should be concerned with are insulin and cortisol.
Uh-huh.
And in my mind, insulin is a lot easier to control because it's very dependent on what you put in your body, whereas cortisol is a little bit trickier. That stress hormone. A lot of times we can't necessarily avoid a stressful scenario. It just happens, but cortisol will 100% drive that abdominal fat. That's where you're going to see it. When you go through kind of a stressful situation, a lot of people correlate it with bloating. I feel more bloated, but that's where that cortisol really, again, tackles that kind of midsection.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's not good. So you also mentioned that in the original food pyramid, one of the things that was really bad for us was this concept of eating 6 small meals a day. And this is very counter to how our ancestors ate. And so what do you think the evolving research about intermittent fasting is? First, tell us what intermittent fasting is. Tell us what we've learned with newer research, and how do you think intermittent fasting could be beneficial to the average person?
Yeah, so in the 1977, when these guidelines came out, again, it was a theory that eating 6 small meals a day would increase your metabolism, because when we are in the state of digestion, we do have a spike in metabolism. It requires extra energy to break down food. So the theory was, instead of having that metabolic spike 3 times a day with breakfast, lunch, and dinner, let's have it 6 times a day. Now, when we look at our eating patterns back in the 70s, typically people ate breakfast at about 8:30, they had lunch at noon, and they had dinner at 5:30. I remember, so I'm 42 years old. I remember when I came home from school when I was young and asked my mom for a snack, she would say, "You're going to ruin your dinner."
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays, it's like if we don't feed our kids every 2 hours, they're going to die. And then we wonder why they don't sit down and eat chicken and broccoli at dinner. Well, they just had a bowl of goldfish an hour ago.
Right.
So this whole 6 small meals a day had, again, not a lot of validation behind it. And what it did was it increased our insulin load because if you look at the pattern, 8:30 to 5:30, we actually have been traditionally fasting for 14 hours up until the 70s, up until this came about. It wasn't until we implemented this 6 small meals a day that then we reduced our fasting window to say 10 hours a day, because now we get up at 6 a.m. and we eat again at 9, noon, 3, 6, and 10. So instead of having an insulin spike at breakfast, recover, lunch, recover, dinner, now our insulin is 6, 9, 12. It's always high.
Yeah.
So we never have that recovery, and then it's high for much longer. And so that's where that whole kind of recommendation got us sideways.
Well,
So go ahead.
I was just saying, we never get to that 2-hour postprandial where we're actually supposed to check our blood sugar again because we're eating every 2 hours.
Yeah. So intermittent fasting can also be viewed as just simply time restricted eating, reducing the time in which we're eating food. Now, every single person in your life, from your 1-year-old to your 110-year-old, should be fasting for 12 hours. And that shouldn't feel difficult, meaning that if you eat breakfast at 7, the kitchen closes at 7. It shouldn't feel that hard. Now, the further that we can increase that fasting window, 12, 14, 16 hours is really where I see a really nice sweet spot for fat metabolism, then you're going to get even more benefit. So reducing your eating window to 6 to 8 hours, again, reduces that insulin load. Plus, it allows your body actually time to burn through all the food you ate the day before you start refueling.
Okay, but wait a minute. I thought that breakfast was the most important meal of the day, and that when we fast, we are starving, which makes us more likely to store fat. So, and now you're telling me only to eat 8 hours a day, so from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., I'm not even getting my 3 squares with this plan. So how do we get past, if this is really how truly our ancestors ate and is truly how we are designed to eat, how do we evolve the conception that, no, this isn't enough food?
Right. And again, the people that are perpetuating this message is big food industries. Trust me, the cereal makers don't want you to skip breakfast. They need you to eat breakfast. And again, I think it just comes down to the fact that, we have a better understanding of just how the body works. And I know it doesn't feel normal to kind of skip breakfast, because I get it. It took me a really long time to kind of buy into this. But here's the deal. I would have a ton of clients that would come into the hospital. I used to work in a hospital setting, and they'd say, Amanda, when I eat breakfast, I'm starving all day long. I can't stop eating. But if I get up and I don't eat breakfast, I'm full and satisfied. I'm fine until 1 or 2 in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. So, and the reason for that is because we actually have mechanisms built into our body to thrive in a fasted state. Mm-hmm. And if we didn't, we wouldn't made it, 1 year of living back as a caveman, right? Because food was not readily available. So you actually have this massive shift in your hormones once you fast, which is far different than starvation. Starvation is more considered under eating. Uh-huh. You're rationing out your food. So you're eating really small calories, like 600 to 800 calories a day. Your metabolism is going to significantly shift in a different way than when we fast, when we do nothing. Mm-hmm. So in a fasted state, you actually have an increase in growth hormone in the morning. You have which gives you energy. You have an increase in adrenaline, which gives you energy. Your hormones, your hunger hormones are reduced, so you're not hungry. Mm-hmm. So all of these things happen to really support and allow us to thrive in that fasted state. We just kind of forgot about it because we got into this whole, you got to eat every 2 hour bit.
Right. Right. And when you do eat every 2 hours, I agree with you. You are starving all day long. That's the perception that you have, is that you're like, I'm still hungry. I'm still hungry. I'm still hungry. Versus, it's 1:30 in the afternoon. For me, I have not eaten today. And it doesn't feel abnormal. Yeah. I got up, I had a cup of tea, I took my supplements, I am drinking plenty of water, and I feel like normal. And it's interesting too, when you actually reduce the number of hours per day that you eat, you come face to face with, I think, the fundamental question that we have stopped asking ourselves as a society, which is, am I hungry? Am I hungry? Yeah. Because when you get down to like a really good understanding of like, oh my gosh, this is actually what hunger feels like. And I think that hunger is distinctly different than sugar withdrawals. They feel completely different. So tell us your top 3 takeaways that you think people need to implement a healthier as well as sustainable lifestyle.
Yeah. So I totally agree with you. And number 1 is to be more of an intuitive eater. Like if you're not hungry, don't eat.
Amen.
One of the things, like for me, when I try to do 6 small meals a day, I couldn't find 6 healthy things to eat a day, and keep them in small enough portions that they'd kind of balance out. So I'm kind of like you, like I eat a really big meal, maybe twice a day, mm-hmm. And then full and satisfied. So if you're not hungry, don't eat, you're definitely going to hear that. So I definitely think if you can reduce your eating window at least to 12 hours, 10 hours, 8 hours, do it. Okay. Yeah. So that's definitely number 1. And here's the thing, there's a lot of value with like saying, I'm not going to eat after 7 o'clock. Because when do we eat most poorly? in
Oh,
the
when
evening.
after you've had those 2 glasses of wine and you're
Yeah,
sitting on the couch and you're like, I'll just eat some cheese. I'll just eat
exactly.
some crackers, whatever it is. Yes, late at night, worst time to eat ever.
Yeah. So saying I don't eat after this time is super powerful. Number two, and you mentioned it, water. I mean, hydration in addition to electrolytes. And I know you're a huge proponent of adequate magnesium, sodium, potassium. Most people are not getting enough electrolytes. So when they think in the morning, if they don't eat breakfast, that they are going to pass out because they get lightheaded and they think their blood sugar's dropping. No, it's your electrolytes.
Yep.
When you adequately consume enough electrolytes, you feel so much better. So good hydration, good water, good electrolyte balance.
And as I'm sure you have just battled with in your career, there is way too much emphasis on the intake of calcium and not nearly enough emphasis on the fact that you actually need basically every single mineral. We talk about calcium and we talk about iron, but nobody's talking about magnesium and zinc and selenium and copper and all of the different tiny little micronutrients that we need to really make all of our enzymes function effectively. Because when your enzymes don't function, you can't metabolize food. You can't feel good because you're not churning, you're not going, you're not
Yeah.
running. Okay, so
You can take all the calcium in the world, but if you don't have enough D, magnesium, and K2, you're not going to absorb it.
and you're not going to push it into your bones and teeth. It's going to
Right.
calcify in your arteries, which is the
Right.
last place we need it to be. Okay, so intermittent fasting, hydration, as well as electrolytes. What's your third takeaway?
Number three is just whole food nutrition. And we're on the
Yes.
same page, mainly plants. What is the one food group we don't eat enough of? Vegetables. What is the one food group that you will never make you gain weight? Vegetables. We need to be eating a variety of color in our diet and the different forms of vegetables as much as possible. It's definitely the one thing that we're lacking. Fiber. It
Yes.
goes really hand in hand with that. It's just high fiber, high plants. Those are the biggest things that you can do.
Absolutely. And I was speaking with someone else on the podcast recently, and she said something that I think is very profound in really emphasizing to people who are nutrition focused and are aware and want to take care of their body. There aren't antioxidants in animal and dairy products. So if we put so much emphasis on like how many antioxidants are in my green tea, how much is in this supplement, can I take this berry juice drink? Or you can just get it from food. You can just get it by eating a really diverse plant-based diet. And nobody is saying that we all have to go completely plant-based, but a shift in the diet towards plant-based is not only good for us, it's good for the environment as well.
Yeah, here's the thing. We have to have protein. Protein is a vital macronutrient, and it is
Totally.
really the only macronutrient that you must consume on a daily basis. So, I think it's important that people recognize, like, we're not saying don't eat protein because you got to get it, but animal protein should be a condiment versus the main the main stage on the plate.
Absolutely.
Really everything else should be what you are eating in abundance.
Well, Amanda, I could talk to you all day because there is so much that you and I see eye to eye on. If any of my listeners have heard something today that makes you feel like, maybe I am ready to break up with this concept of the diet and actually make some common sense choices about the way that I eat, you might be interested in Amanda's Lean program. Her Living Energized and Nourished is a 7-week online wellness program run through her private app. The landscape of nutrition is changing rapidly, and as a registered dietitian, Amanda has the goal to lead you through the Lean program, which will help you to cut through the clutter and give you straightforward, easy to understand information about how to make healthy eating and weight loss choices for yourself and your family. All you have to do to access the program, as well as a lot of free resources on her website, is head to www.amandanigbert.com. That's www.amandanigbert.com. So, Amanda, before I let you go. Are you ready for some lightning round questions?
Let's do it.
Okay. What is your number one strength?
My positivity, the ability to see the positive in anything.
What is the thing that you struggle with the most?
Self-doubt.
Oh, isn't that just the rule of self-employed women right there?
That's right. That's right.
If you could say one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Wow. Never give up. It took me over 40 years to find this space that I've kind of created. And, there was a lot of trial and error to get there. So you're never too young to cultivate a new direction.
What keeps you up at night?
Not enough magnesium.
Take that magnesium, y'all. I'm telling you, it is a tonic for the nervous system. Who has been your greatest inspiration?
Oh, wow. My former boss, she was a woman, very powerful, really just, led the way for me to feel like I too, as a woman, could be in a powerful position.
Oh, wow. I love that. And last but not least, God to you is?
Oh man, the sun, the wind, the spirit, the feeling of being, watched over is what God is to me.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Check out Amanda Nighbert over at her website, amandanighbert.com. Thank you so much for being with me on the Lindsey Elmore Show.
Thank you.
Taking supplements is challenging, and when there are dozens and dozens of them to choose from, deciding which one to take is difficult, and determining if the combination that you chose to put together is safe and effective and meaningful is even tougher. I have a website dedicated to education about supplements and products from Young Living essential oils, and I have a free download that will ensure that you are choosing your supplements wisely, using them correctly, and not wasting money on supplements that you don't need. To get the free download, head to www.yledclub.com/safe supplements. You'll get a free downloadable book that will ensure that you have the confidence to take all of your supplements with ease. Once again, that's www.yledclub.com/safe supplements. Dr. Vivian Chen, thank you so much for coming and being a guest on the Lindsey Elmore Show.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm so honored to be here. I am a big fan of your work, so it's such an honor.
Hey, thank you so much. I find your story completely fascinating. You started as an allopathic physician, and I thought I was being bold when I stopped practicing pharmacy, but I still have my license. I still have that fallback plan, but you dove headfirst into the deep end and just decided I am going to practice all natural medicines. When I worked in family medicine, seeing people with hypertension, diabetes, high cholesterol, asthma, COPD, things that are lifestyle conditions in a lot of ways. Not so much asthma, but the others are, they're a product of choices that we make. And I had those feelings of, okay, you have diabetes. All you got to do is change your diet. All you got to do is change the way that you eat. But people just were like, oh, that sounds hard. That sounds difficult. That's not something I want to do. And it's extraordinarily frustrating as a clinician because you want your patients to get better. You don't want to be seeing people sick and not able to live their lives, but yet the way that we're trained is just, it doesn't work to piecemeal the body into this body system or that body system. And like you said, a pill for every ill. It just doesn't work. Exactly.
Not to say that, when I first made the realization, it felt like a really bad breakup. I felt betrayed. So I kind of went the other way and went fully holistic, which I'm kind of like, I'm now in a place where I realize there's a place for conventional medicine. The medications that you're so so much of an expertise in, they're necessary to bridge that gap while we work on the underlying root cause. And I think that's the perfect scenario, right? We utilize a bit of both so that, we're saving lives, but we're also working at root causes. And sometimes, with diabetes that's too far gone, we can't always reverse it with diet, but, we can usually help improve symptoms somewhat with lifestyle.
So tell us more about this root cause, because I think functional medicine is having like a real big moment, and everybody wants to talk about how do we get down to what is causing the problems. And so if one of the listeners is sitting at home and they're like, oh no, I just got diagnosed with hypertension, I just got diagnosed with diabetes, what steps can people take in their daily lives to help them identify root causes of illness as they are still using their medications for diabetes or still using their medications for hypertension? How can they test some theories about maybe this is stress related or maybe it's food related, et cetera?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because, one of the frustrations that I hear a lot on social media is that, oh, functional medicine is so expensive, I can't afford it. So, it's again about empowering people, right? And that's why you and I are on social media. It's to kind of share information that, we're both from a scientific background. So, we're not just like a lay person and sharing information. What we put out is science-based information we've vetted. And so I think that's the first step, is to maybe find resources that are reliable, that you can trust, and try and, there's so many good books out there. Michael Greger's, Dr. Greger's book, How Not to Die, is fantastic, and it can cover so many different conditions in there. That would be a great place to start.
Huge champion of plant-based eating. I love Dr. Greger's work a lot.
Yes. So, that would be a good place to start. And his website, nutritionfacts.org, amazing website. Everything is referenced. So it's science-based, but it's lifestyle approaches, right? So, and it's not lifestyle approaches that you can't trust. These are science-based lifestyle approaches. So I think that's a good place to start, because there are so many different things. And as you said earlier, we don't want to segue the body into systems. They're not separate. They're interconnected.
No, they all work together.
So hypertension, and if you incorporate a little bit kind of Eastern way of thinking, the liver is actually what supports the cardiovascular system
the liver governs the blood.
Right.
Why do you think that food is medicine, and what changes have you seen in your patients that you've worked with when they change the way that they eat?
Oh, it's so powerful. There's two things, I think. One is that what you're putting in may be causing the chronic disease in the first place.
Yes.
That's the first aspect. So if it's causing inflammation, then it can lead to chronic diseases. But the other aspect is that food can be healing. So that, the antioxidants and the healing powers of food can be utilized. So when you actually switch to a diet that's more suitable for you, you're removing inflammation and the things that triggering disease, and then you're adding in healing things. So those two combined is, synergistic.
Yes.
I can't even tell you that just too many to count, people who have got better just through lifestyle measures. And that's why I'm quite happy to be without my prescription pad over here in San Francisco, because I've been able to help so many people without my prescription pad. So, sometimes I do have to tell my clients, hey, you have to go get a prescription from your doctor for like a hidden infection or something.
Sure.
But other than that, I have helped women with PCOS cycle again and, start ovulating. High cholesterol clients drop their cholesterol, come off medication, always with the guidance of their doctor, of course. I can't take people off medication as a coach, but it's just countless. My husband, he had hypertension, diagnosed when he was 36, put on medication. He is very much allopathic, like, don't talk to me about the woo-woo stuff kind of.
Right, yeah.
But then I gave him Dr. Greger's book to read, and at around the same time, he's primary care physician was telling him he needed a second medication for his hypertension.
Yeah.
So then he started to make lifestyle changes, and his blood pressure is much better. So there are just so many instances. But as you said, it takes work. It seems daunting at first.
Well, the other thing that I think hypertension is such a good example of is the crazy belief that all humans are supposed to have these exact same measures of health.
Right.
Everybody has to have a systolic blood pressure of 120, and if you go above that, it's bad. Let's say someone, they're listening to this podcast and they just go, you know what? I have no money. I can't pay for these consultations with this physician that's going to do this integrative wellness. My insurance only pays for me to go to this one physician. What would you say your top 5 suggestions are for how to really embrace health in your own life without having to outsource it to this person or that person? How do you actually empower people with just 5 pillars of health?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think I would definitely start with nutrition. Yeah. So, and I mean, that's a minefield in itself, right? I mean, there's so many different camps of nutrition. It's so confusing if you start internet surfing and finding different.
Yeah, is it vegan? Is it paleo?
Right.
Is it pescatarian? How, that was one of the questions that I was thinking about when I was preparing for this interview, is like, how is anyone supposed to know what to eat? Every nutritionist is going to give you different advice.
Absolutely.
Physicians in the United States, at least, get practically no nutrition training. They don't look at food as a key part of the equation. There's food deserts all over the United States. If you're poorer or live in a poorer neighborhood, you're less likely to have access to food. It makes it challenging. But okay, so we start with nutrition, completely agree. And then and what else?
So what I think I want to add to the nutrition is that, even despite all the conflict, I think the overarching thing that almost everybody agrees on is you got to get rid of packaged foods, get rid of processed foods. So, if you're confused, start with that. And eat foods that's as close to the earth as possible. And that looks like what your grandmother would have seen when, she was growing up. That's food and not just food-like substances.
Yes.
And then number 2, eat mostly plants and lots of plants and lots of fiber. So those are the 3 principles I think that you really just can't go wrong. And then whatever else you may want to add in, depending on your body type or your health needs, that can, that's the little kind of nuance, but those 3 should be the guiding principles.
I think, you said you've got to eat mostly plants. And I think people have a total misconception that means that you are eating spinach and kale and that's it. And you mentioned fiber being such an important part. So give me a concept of, tell me what it means to you when you say eat mostly plants, because I don't want people to walk away and take if I don't just drink celery juice, I'm never going to be healthy. So tell me, what are some of your favorite plant-based ingredients that you keep around the house that you think help you to reduce inflammation and stay healthy?
Right. So I love your cookbook, by the way. I think that's a great place for everybody to start.
And you have a cookbook and you have recipes over on your blog. So everybody, you can check out Dr. Chen at platefulhealth.com. So thank you. I take some crap for my cookbooks because I do use meat substitutes, but I think if you're trying to get someone to start eating plant-based, it can just be such an easier foray into
I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. We don't want to get people from 0 to 100 in one go, right? It has to be in steps. And, that's exactly my approach to, if you're transitioning. But, what I'd love to do is tell my clients to if they don't eat very many vegetables to start with, it's just to go to the farmer's market and pick up 2 new things every week.
Yeah.
And then look up recipes, or, if you have recipes, then go out and, try the different plants. So, I will have like zoodles. So I have zucchini and make zoodles with that. And then, try to sub away from the packaged food. I know I love pasta myself. But,
pasta is delicious.
I know. So, it's about balance, right? So I might do half pasta, half zoodles to mix it up. When you meal prep, for example, you have like 10 different things meal prepped, and then you literally just throw everything in one bowl, and then throw on a really tasty dressing, or Green Goddess, one of my favorites.
Delicious.
And then you have like dressing. You have instant 10-minute meal ready, and then it's full of plants, and it can be cooked. You can like cook your roast your Brussels sprouts, some broccoli. So there's so many, and legumes like beans count as plants too, right?
Absolutely.
So you can pre-cook those. I pre-cook them and put them in what they call stasher bags and freeze them in portions. So I just take out a bag each time and let that defrost, or I throw it in a pan and warm it up, and it's just instant beans, right? That counts. And beans are so full of fiber. So those are kind of some of my tips.
Well, and I think that the other great thing about eating diversity in plants, you're eating your rices and grains, you've got your beans and legumes, you have the actual vegetables, you have fruit. There's so much variety that you really don't miss a lot on the plate. I think that humans, we tie meat into being successful. That was how our ancestors had a success.
Yes, I agree.
If you're, every culture has a way of how do we handle butchering a pig, and it becomes a celebratory thing. But it's like Dr. Greger says, we've got to be eating plants as if our lives depend on it, because they do. And I love the idea of just trying something new. I mean, it's astonishing, even for me, who's been eating mostly plant-based for years and years, to realize, holy crap, there's another vegetable that I've never tried. I mean, and having fun with it and exploring with it.
When you're making, for example, bolognese sauce, so obviously
a traditional meat sauce.
I don't use the meat, but because I don't use the meat, I can sub in so many different varieties of vegetables. And because it's like in tomato sauce, they really can't taste anything.
You can't taste it. I mean, it honestly is astonishing to make a bolognese with lentils. You're going to get the same texture, a whole lot less cholesterol, a whole lot less fat. And the thing I think that's so spectacular about eating plants is that it tells your brain that you're full.
Exactly.
While you're still consuming way fewer calories, because vegetables are more dense than meat, calorie per calorie. And so you engage the stretch receptors in your stomach as well as the density receptors in your stomach. And it sends that signal to your brain that says, I'm full, which I think is a big fear for people, especially people who have eaten meat their whole life and never even thought about eating plant-based.
It's so interesting because the gut-brain connection is super interesting to me. There was that study that showed, as humans, we naturally crave calorie-dense foods, right? So, if you have a fried, I don't know, donut or something in front of you, you want to go for that rather than celery stick next to it.
Of course.
But they did this study where if they gave short chain fatty acids to a group of volunteers, they were more likely to not want the calorie dense food if they had short chain fatty acids, and those are the byproducts of fiber, right, by our gut bacteria. So so maybe we can actually affect our food choices and food cravings just by eating more plants and more fiber.
Absolutely. And it is just such a simple transition. If you give it to yourself and just say, okay, I'm going to just go for it and start eating mostly plants. No one is denying that high calorie food and even meat in general is pretty delicious, but we also know it's pro-inflammatory. We also know it causes endothelial dysfunction, which makes your cardiovascular system not work correctly. It just sets you up for sickness, which food does not have to do.
Yeah. And I don't know what your experience was, but the more I transitioned, the more plants I ate, the less I wanted to eat them. Like, I just don't even crave meat anymore. Like, it doesn't smell good. Like, when I go into grocery stores, I actually find like that section really stink for me. Right. I don't know. Like, I think that my gut bacteria has changed so much. My microbiome is like, well, plants smell so much nicer. Go for that section.
Okay, now I'm fascinated by that. Tell me more about this. Tell me more about how our microbiome, it's insane how many bacterial cells we have inside of our body. We are actually more bacteria than we are human. Yep. And we know that consumption of a high meat diet it transitions your microbiome to bacteria that feed on carnitine, and the carnitine bacterial interaction is what causes the proliferation of TMAO, which is one of the most pro-inflammatory substances that we have. So when you move to eating more plants, tell us what happens with your gut bacteria that actually helps to sustain health more long-term.
Yeah, I think there's two things. One is that you start to get more diversity, and we know diversity of microbiome is correlated with health. Mm-hmm. And secondly, you start to shift the balance towards, a more beneficial, less inflammatory, because our microbiome, the bacteria in our gut, can actually produce inflammatory cytokines, right? So if you have and that's perhaps one of the mechanisms they can contribute to disease, is that they're creating all these inflammatory cytokines that's being released into our blood. So, saturated fat is actually another thing that can actually shift that balance as well. And that's, cheese is heavily, laden with saturated fat, so that
as well as chemicals that are psychoactive. That people say, "Oh my gosh, I'm addicted to cheese," and I'm like, "No.
Oh yes,
you really are. You are really addicted to casein. You are addicted to casomorphines right now." Yeah.
Right. So cheese is actually one of the hardest things in my experience, for people to give up. It's harder than meat. For a lot of people. And that's why.
I completely agree. It is so hard for people because it engages the same receptors in your brain as do many painkillers. And so you're engaging that system that says, oh my gosh, I'm comforted. I feel better. I agree. I think that a lot of people have a harder time giving up cheese than they do meat. And and I'm sure it's all, as you said earlier, it's all about balance. This is not about saying you have to be 100% plant-based all the dang time, but you're just saying eat more plants. Eat more plants.
Eat more plants, eat more fiber, eat more diversity of plants. And then, eventually I guide my clients to have about, around 30 to 40 different types of plants into their diet per week.
Oh, wow.
That's the goal.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun. That's a fun little exercise for people.
Right.
Like, can you eat 40 different types of plants in 1 week? Yeah.
Yeah. And then, when they would start with 5, I say, okay, next week aim for like 8. And then we go up in stages, right? So it's not so overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some more simple action steps? I mean, I love the idea of saying, okay, you ate 5 different kinds of vegetables. Let's do 7 next week. What are some other just simple action steps that anyone can take to take greater ownership of their health?
So we're not talking about nutrition anymore, right? We're going other things.
Broad, overall health.
So in my opinion, sleep is is probably as important as nutrition, because I don't know, something about our modern day lifestyle. Sleep is so eroded. Like people don't prioritize it. They think, it's for the week, or, you can sleep when you're dead, all those kind of things. Like you're a champion if you don't sleep. But, it's actually, the one pillar that's so important to supporting our health, because if you're not sleeping, then you're more inflamed, your hormones are out of balance, your circadian rhythm's out of balance, your microbiome's going to be out of balance. It just throws off so many other aspects of health that sleep absolutely needs to be prioritized. And it really it's hard for most people to do, because
well, Dr. Vivian Chen, thank you so very much for being here on the Lindsey Elmore Show.
Me.
You can find Vivian and follow along with her social media journey at plateful.health, and you can find her website platefulhealth.com.
Thank you.
The Lindsey Elmore Show is dedicated to helping women live their healthiest lives. And one of the ways that we can do that is by intentionally detoxifying our system from all the crappy food that we eat and all the crappy drinks that we drink. I developed the Clean Slate Cleanse with one thing in mind: make the food delicious. A lot of people, when you tell them, we're going to go wheat-free, sugar-free, alcohol-free, caffeine-free, and vegan, it sounds completely impossible. People tell me they have no idea what they'll eat. People tell me that they are scared that they will be hungry, that they will be restricted. And so I thought, how do I develop healthy recipes that help people to transform the way that they eat and the way that they relate to the food on their plate? Just because it's vegan, just because it's gluten-free, does not mean that it doesn't get to be tasty. When you participate in the Clean Slate Cleanse or purchase a cookbook, you will be purchasing a set of recipes guaranteed to be absolutely delicious, easy to cook, and they will be meals that the whole family will love. Head over to www.cleanslatecleanse.com. Pick up a cookbook, pick up a workbook, and sign up for our next Clean Slate Cleanse. It's 21 days. It will make you feel better, and you will love the food. I promise. And now, back to the show. Hey there, and welcome to a segment with me and my man, Derick LUGO. We're calling it The Perfect Relationship. In this segment, we're going to tackle all of the hard-hitting issues that face modern couples.
Wait, what?
We're going to talk about the things that people fight about the most, like sex.
Oh, I thought we were going to talk about our favorite show on Netflix.
Oh, and then we're also going to talk about finances and money and how we deal
Disney
with
Plus.
it. Whether or not we're going to have children.
Hulu.
How we respect each other's love languages.
Apple TV.
Who does chores around the house? What pet peeves we have that drive each other crazy. We're going to talk about family disagreements, going to therapy, and religion and politics. And we'll go through and rehash all of the disagreements that we've had in the past.
I'm out of here.
Wait. No, you got to stay.
I rather floss with barbed wire.
Welcome to The Perfect Relationship. This is my guy. His name's Derick LUGO. We live together and share life in all the ways that couples do. And there are times in our relationship that we falter in communication. We fail to clearly say that we need space. Understand the other person's needs, and state what's important to us. And one area that is one of our biggest disagreements is about going out to dinner. I love fancy restaurants. Derick is a hardcore vegan, and restaurants don't really cater to his needs. And so one of the things that I have learned about Derick is that he wants his plant-based eating to be easy and to be comfortable and to be inclusive. But vegan dining, especially fine dining, is really difficult. Like, restaurants do not know how to do it. He admits that he eats in a way that's set in his ways, and I admit that I eat as a way to explore, and dining out is entertainment. So for today's podcast, we decided to go to 2 restaurants, a spot I chose and a spot he chose. And here were the ground rules. I had one. I said the restaurant can serve meat and I can eat it, but we have to have fun. That was like the biggest rule. I just was like,
we always have fun.
We have to have fun. And I also said that I would call in advance to ensure that they had something that Dee could eat. Dee's rules were whoever picks the spot pays for it. And that if I eat meat in front of him, he won't kiss me for 6 hours. And so... At least. It might be 6 days for all I know. So what did we learn about our Valentine's Day and birthday dining experience? So we started with my choice. I was so excited. We were going to get afternoon tea at a very fancy schmancy spot here in Manhattan.
Yeah, I was excited about that.
Yeah, because you've never had afternoon tea.
Yeah, I don't do that. I'm from Brooklyn. I don't do that. Give me café con leche. I'm good.
And so, and with oat leche.
Yeah. Oat leche.
And so,
not moo leche.
Not moo leche. And so we get to this, like, what is supposed to be this absolutely gorgeous, like, upscale restaurant. The tables don't match. They decided to stop serving afternoon tea. And even though I called in advance and told them that we had a vegan diner, it was a hot mess.
They didn't serve tea. Well, we should have known as soon as we walked in, it was empty. I was like, what is going on here?
Yeah. It was empty. And then I tell the server, so they're going for fine dining. And if you run a restaurant anywhere in the world, it's my opinion that you should have something on the menu that basically anyone can eat. You know, that's vegan, that's gluten-free, that's all of these things that people want. And when we saw that they weren't doing cucumber sandwiches and tiny cups of tea like we wanted, we asked the server if he could please ask the chef to make something vegan. And an hour went by.
An hour, but it wasn't a quiet hour because there was another table. There was this one lady just like, where's my food? Every time food came out the kitchen, she was like, oh, here it comes.
And she's like watching it go by, and we're like, what is going on?
And she's like, and then she had her napkin. She was waving her napkin like, oh, what about us?
I know. And she's like, I just want my Impossible Burger. And we were like, okay, this is kind of strange. But then
we were getting to that point where we were waiting for a while. And I think they were there before us. So if she's waiting and she's upset, then like, ooh, when are we getting our meal?
And then our server left. There was shift change in the middle of our meal.
Our server disappeared.
And our server just completely disappeared. And normally at a restaurant, you know, you go and you say, hey, I'm getting off work. This person is taking your table. None of that. And then we start seeing food for other tables
that got there after us.
20 minutes after us go by.
Mind you, this is Valentine's Day, and we want to have like a nice date.
Yeah, it was like the place I picked for Valentine's Day.
We were trying to stay positive. We were like, okay, you know what? We had a nice time at the museum. It's cool. It's fine.
And then they brought out Derick's food. They finally, an hour after we order, we finally have food on the table. And again, cooking vegan is not really that challenging.
It's not hard.
It's not groundbreaking to say hey, we're going to cook some plants.
Yeah, no, a lot of the restaurants here in New York are catering to vegans because that's just the way it is. So it's not that hard.
Yeah.
You know, and my thing is that when you ask if they have a vegan dish, they're like, yes, and then they come back with butter or some dairy on it. That's obviously not vegan. They don't know what a vegan is.
Well, and this dish that they finally brought him.
How did they make it vegan?
they just took the sauce off of the pasta, which does not count. Just dry pasta. That was about what he got. And so at this point, we're like, oh, this is just not going to work out.
And the plate was all messy. They didn't even wipe the plate
down.
The
plate, it had like thumbprints on it. And we were just like, oh, Lord. And so again, it's Valentine's Day. We're trying to like really, we were like, let's be positive. And so we're like, okay, we're going to leave. And so we called the manager over. The manager's like, you don't have to pay for anything. And we're like, good. And we leave.
Good, we out.
We out.
Gotta go. Let's go before she changes her mind.
I know. And so then the rest of the day just became a comedy of errors. We never got fed, ever.
No, it took, I didn't eat until like, I think it was 10:30 that night.
It was so bad. But I think what we learned from it is that, well, I gotta say, I was kind of a little bit frustrated when they brought out the pasta, and I could see how disappointed you were.
Well, the serving, it was like one bite size, and it was like a $30 plate.
Of dry pasta.
I'm not doing it. I'm sorry, I'm not doing it. It's an hour late. They send me something that wasn't what we expected. And the service was horrible. No one was around. And then when we explained it to her, she's like, well, we're moving toward fine dining. I'm like, look.
And I wanted to be like, lady, if you think this is fine dining in New York City, this ain't it. This is not. I've been to fine dining in
I think
New
McDonald's
York.
has more fine dining than this place.
You probably could have gotten an Impossible Burger faster from Burger King than this place, for sure.
Truth with an F.
So it was disappointing when the food came out, and he was instantly just like, we have to go. This is not going to work. But then I was like, you know what? Just go with it. Just go with it. And it had already been an hour. We were already super frustrated. So then we went.
Where did we go after that?
So then we tried to go to the Hawaiian spot, and they had two things on the menu, Spam and fried chicken. Not gonna work.
Not vegan. Although Spam's not real meat.
First remember we tried to go to one of our favorite vegan spots, and they were only doing a 4-course prefix menu for Valentine's Day.
$1 million. I'm like, I'm hungry. Can you just give me a vegan biscuit? I'll eat that. Come on.
So then we go to another spot, and they're like, we don't have room for you.
List, yeah.
He's running late because he was having to go to work. I'm just like, come on, babe, let's just get some chili and sit on the street and eat it. And he's
cold
like,
out? No.
And he's like, Lindsey, it's cold out and the streets are disgusting. And I'm like,
you want to sit on a sidewalk? How many homeless people urinated on that corner?
Virgos. And so then we ended up at a bar, and we ordered guacamole. And remember, they like set the guacamole down like.
Was that the same?
That was all the same night. That was all the same day. Just comedy of freaking errors.
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah.
But I think what we learned from it. What did you learn from it?
That people are dumb. I don't know. I don't know if I learned anything from it.
No, you're gonna have a good lesson. That's what the sketch is about.
That's what the sketch is about. Okay.
I learned that even when I'm hangry, I can still be nice.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I've seen you hangry, and it's oof.
Yeah.
Not a pretty sight.
Yeah. But then the next day was my birthday, and we went down and we checked out an awesome Thai spot. What neighborhood was it in?
It was in the Chelsea area.
Yeah, so shout out to Glur Thai for rescuing this segment, because otherwise it would have just been like wah, wah, wah over and over again. So we ate delicious food. What all did we eat?
Well, first of all, I picked it out because every time we want to go out or order in, you're like, let's get Thai. And I'm not the biggest Thai fan, but this time around, since it was your birthday, I was like, you know what? Let's just do Thai, let's just do it. So I found the one that was vegan, and it sounded great. And as soon as I told you, we were like, yeah, let's do it. So I don't remember what I had. What did we have?
We had the fried tofu. We had, you had curry. And Yeah, and then I had the sauteed eggplant with basil and the chilies.
Did mine have Beyond Meat in it or no?
Yours had the Impossible Duck.
Okay, that's
which, if you have not ever had the mock duck, I've only seen it at Thai places. Highly recommend it. It's delicious.
It's the first time I had it. It was good.
Yeah.
It was really good.
So we're excited to go back because Glur Thai is going to be launching brand new plant-based chicken nuggets, which will be fun. Did you go try it again?
And there was this, what about the cookie shop next door that had vegan cookies? Like,
and then next door, there just happened to be, that was called the protein cookie or something like that. Mm-hmm. And they had vegan, gluten-free, high-protein cookies that really just capped off the whole meal. Mm. And I had to learn on this day to trust, because when Dee told me that he's like, I found this epic vegan spot, I was like, it's my birthday, dang it, and I wants to eat what I wants to eat.
We weren't going to go to a steakhouse or something like that, because then what am I going to eat? You know, like I had to...
Asparagus.
I knew you liked Thai, so I was like, let me just meet her halfway. We'll have vegan, but then there's like Thai because you like it. So
yeah, but then it turned out there was tons of stuff on the menu, both vegetarian, vegan, and omnivorous. But what looked the most delicious was actually the vegetables. So that's what we went with. Lots of vegetables. So I had to learn to trust. And then I had to learn how to not be bratty, even though I was super hangry. And that was what we learned on our dates.
Our dates are pretty tricky. They're pretty tricky.
Why?
Like you like certain things, and you like, and I don't know if you mentioned this, but you like to go out more than I do when it comes to going to restaurants.
He just wants me to cook every day.
No, that's not. That's not true. Look, why would I cook when you're like an amazing like chef? It's like having a celebrity hairstylist, and you're gonna try to cut your own hair. No, I have this awesome cook. She's amazing, and you love to cook. It's not like it's slave work. You're like there early, just like with a smile, and I'm like, okay, I'll just clean up after you. You are, now that's work in itself because you are the messiest cook. Like I'm like stepping on I got like rice between my toes, and I'm like, what is going on here? Like, so I mean, it just works out. I'll cook. It's just, I don't want you judging, like adding more stuff to it, like salt, pepper, and like just let me.
As if you don't do that with the stuff that I cook.
That's true.
I love you, babe.
I love you too. Aww. We just need like a little heart right here, just like cover our face.
The Lindsey Elmore Show is written and produced by me, Lindsey Elmore. Show segments are produced by Sue Procco and Kelsey Lorman. Production design, sound design, and editing is by Jive Media. If you have a question about this or any other episode of the podcast, send us an email to hello@lindseyelmoreshow.com. And hey, since you're still here, take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And while you're at it, go over and follow us on Instagram @Lindsey Elmore Show. This helps us bring the pod to more people.